On this episode of That Was a Show?
Something Wilder was a show. This harmless family sitcom was developed as a vehicle for the Hollywood legend Gene Wilder. Join Brynn, Aaron, and Barry as they make their way through this Gene pick.
We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince. But those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Byrne,
Aaron Yeger,
and Andrew Helmer as Barry.
A Radio Gizmo production.
Good to see you, Barry.
This could be a weird one. Yeah, hey, what's going on, guys?
Had a wild time watching Something Wilder.
Oh, that's better than the pun I came up with in my little intro. That's better. Why don't I? Yeah. All right.
Let's get into it.
On the other hand, I did not have a wild time. I thought it was... It was more the equivalent of the lineup before the roller coaster than the roller coaster.
Wow. Okay, it's gonna be one of those. It's gonna be one of those weeks.
Okay.
All right. I actually found it all rather charming, to be honest. So,
well, I'm looking forward to the contrast of opinions. Before we get into it, I just want to give another thanks to Neil, who joined us in our previous episode as a guest.
Right on. Yeah, we had 2 guests in a row.
Yeah.
You're welcome, everybody out there.
Yeah, got to hear some other voices for a change.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to jump right in. We're talking about Gene Wilder's sitcom from the 90s, Something Wilder. Which is anybody out there? I don't know if you're all friends of me or friends of us, but I happen to love Gene Wilder, so this was my pick, and I was very excited just to see, some Gene Wilder content I have not seen before. So that's what we chose this. Getting it right out of the way, this is a very safe show. It's just it's a little piece of a little family sitcom. A father with a wife who is inappropriate in either age or appearance for him, with some 2 precocious children's. And a job that is pretty incidental and also has very little in common with what that job would really entail. Gene Wilder plays Gene Bergman, who runs an advertising agency with his partner, who's played by Gregory Itzin. But it's the mid-October relationship with his delightful wife, Annie, played by Hilary Bailey Smith, that is kind of like the driving force of the series. They have 2 twin boys, whose names I did not bother to learn. They were twins, and they did cute. One of them is Sam, and one of them is the other one.
Yeah.
And
they had cute curly hair like him.
Cute curly hair. Yeah, they did. His relationship with his sons is pretty adorable because he's just sort of like a big 50-year-old child himself. This series was created by Lee Kelcham and Barnett Kellman. It ran for 18 episodes. We watched 2 episodes, the pilot and episode 4, which was delightfully named Hanging with Mr. Cooper, which we will get into later as to why it was called that and why that is delightful. In the first episode, Gene and Annie are dealing with their twin boys' upcoming first day of preschool, while Annie is dreading the boys growing up, which is a pretty typical sitcom plot. Gene is very much looking forward to breaking their very long-standing sexual dry spell, and spends most of the episode basically trying to figure out how to have sex with his own wife. Unlike a lot of sitcoms, luckily she's pretty into it too, so it doesn't get that weird.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was pretty much the pilot episode. Do you want to talk about that one for a little while, guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
I want to start by saying I'm also a huge Gene Wilder fan.
Everyone here is.
But I don't think anyone could be faulted for thinking that he is more a star of the big screen and not the small screen, because when you chose this show, Barry, I was certainly surprised that he had a sitcom, and I suspect many people listening will be equally surprised because he wasn't really known much for television.
No. I mean, he had a fairly high-profile sitcom gig late in his career, but it was not a starring role. It was just a guest star. So, yeah. This was weird for me I did not know this existed.
So, it's weird because I didn't at first, but then once I started seeing clips, I was like, oh, this is coming back to me. Like, I vaguely remember this because I had this flash of remembering him rolling around with two little toddlers with curly hair. Like, I just I was like, oh, yes.
They were playing Ha.
Yeah. They were playing Ha.
I also want to get two things out of the way right off the top. One is that I was happy to see that they at least addressed the significant age difference between his character and his spouse as a key part of the plot. So I
liked that too. Yeah.
So it's not like we as the audience were just supposed to think, oh yeah, this is nothing. There's nothing to see here. It's very much a repeated talking point in the show. And they are, in the year that this show first aired, 37 and 61 years old, respectively. The actors. I don't know how old the characters are supposed to be.
I got the impression that he wasn't quite 61. But on the other hand, there's nothing really that suggests that he was not playing his age. But, you know, he was in his 50s for sure.
Yeah.
And, you know, his age comes up and there's... You know, they don't mine it for a lot of emotional depth or anything, but there are a few moments where you can tell that he is uncomfortable in his position as a man who had kids really late in life, and he's just trying to adjust to that. Or more, he doesn't like people's perceptions of him as being older.
Yeah, he definitely seems self-conscious of it.
Very self-conscious of it.
There are a lot of jokes made by his business partner who has children who are
his younger business partner
are going off to college.
Yeah, are going off to college. So, you know, there's that very predictable joke about how, you know, your kids are just getting out of diapers and by the time they go to college, you'll be getting back into diapers and you know.
The other thing I wanted to note right off the bat is that this is the most tropey show I have ever seen in our now 42 episodes of doing this podcast. And I look forward to calling out many of these tropes throughout our discussion.
Oh, yeah. These are all pretty standard sitcom fare. I mean, even just the kids going off to school, be it preschool, be it high school, be it, you know, I feel like that is some pretty well trodden territory for pilots, especially.
Yeah, first day of X for the kids.
Yeah, for the kids and how the parents react to it.
Yeah.
So that's your first trope right there. Twins. Also a trope.
Incredibly precocious young children trope.
It was interesting, though, that they went with fraternal twins, and they said that, and the boys who play them are not actual brothers. So which is interesting because I feel like sitcoms at that time often had twins, that were real twins.
But then you got to find four.
Exactly. Yeah. It's So but in all the descriptions that I found online, it was fraternal twins.
Interesting. I didn't notice that.
Just say twins.
The show never really states that, and they look enough alike that it wouldn't have really been a thing.
Yeah.
I knew they were played by they weren't brothers, but on the other hand, I didn't at any point think they weren't.
I found it a little...
What's the other one? Identical.
Yeah. I found it a little freaky just how much they kind of looked like him. It seems like they did a nationwide search for children who look like Gene Wilder.
Maybe they did.
They probably did.
They probably did exactly that.
Yeah.
Like, I can't remember. I couldn't tell the kids apart, even though they look completely different. Like, I don't know who's who, but like one of them even like has his like jawline. Like, I was like,
completely different. They look almost exactly the same.
Whatever. Yeah. It's I just found it really funny how they like went out of their way to like find like little mini Gene Wilders. And like, yeah, they don't look like their mom at all, which is kind of annoying, but like it would have been cute almost if like one of the boys, since they're fraternal, since that was such a big thing, like one of the boys like looked like mom and one of the boys looked like dad. Like that would be super cute. Like if one had a little like brown bowl cut like mom.
Yeah.
These might have been the youngest kids with full dialogue that I've ever seen in a sitcom. And that goes for the pilot, not for the other episode we watched. We'll get into that. The lack of their presence in the other episode later.
Yeah.
Well, I think, I mean, the second episode we watch is a very also tropey. It's a stunt episode, right? So most of the cast is not really hanging around in that one.
Yeah.
I think one of the big driving things of the show is like, I'm probably wrong, but the relationship between Gene and Annie, I find to be pretty delightful. And their back and forth with each other is very, very funny. And I never really questioned why they were together because, like they're very delightful. They have very good chemistry together. Yeah. So
I already feel a repeat of our discussion from the Mel Brooks show coming on, where you liked it and I hated it. And it's funny that Gene Wilder and Mel Brooks worked so tightly together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, okay, so I'm gonna counter exactly what you said. Like I think that you're right. Like, I agree. They had a really great rapport. Like, the actors had great chemistry. Like, I thought, like Annie and Gene did. But I just found him kind of, like, very off-putting. And I found it really, really hard to believe that, like, a woman in her 30s would find him attractive. Like, his whole persona was, like, so goofy, but not in a delightful, like, cool way. Like, I just did not find it. And I just hated seeing him run around in shorts with the kids. Like, I just, like, I found it all really, like, undignified and, like, annoying.
Well, right, because this isn't Gene, because he's not playing himself, even though the character is named Gene. So she's not attracted to
Gene Wilder,
the incredibly successful, charismatic, and presumably extremely wealthy Gene Wilder. She's attracted to this guy,
Gene Bergman,
and he's not like,
but he's goofy and he's fun to be around. He's good with kids and like, I mean, isn't that's way better than like, I get if she was into him because he was rich.
I'm not saying that would be a good thing. I'm just saying,
but it's just like he doesn't have any swagger or anything. Like, he doesn't have any, like, he's just all like, I don't know. Maybe
okay, but I'm gonna flip it and say my bigger problem with their relationship. I mean, I agree their chemistry as performers was good.
Yeah.
The thing I bumped on more was not this issue of whether she would realistically find him attractive. It was the tropiness of the relationship. Getting back to that thing that I flagged earlier, like even starting off right off the bat on like a major plot point of the pilot being the whole one spouse begging the other for sex trope. Like, I've seen enough of that. And the other part of it being, and I think maybe like the more problematic part of it is, and I don't know what the term would be for this, but the housewife who's always angry trope. Because she's always pissed off at something he's doing, his behavior, things that he says. Everything's irking her, and I feel like there's some sort of inherent misogyny in these shows that position the female character as, like the one who has to put up with the man-child character and is always kind of cranky about it.
I mean, we do get to see a bit more of a silly side of her in the second episode we watch, which we'll get to later.
Yes.
But
I liked her way more in that episode.
I didn't really find her really upset with Gene all that much. I felt like most of the time she was finding his nonsense to be kind of charming. And like, it's usually like they both had very separate plots from each other in both the episodes, right?
Yeah.
I didn't find, in fact, it was the very idea that I did not think that this is why I bought them as a couple, because like usually when you watch these, they are constant. Like I was expecting her to be always annoyed with him, but for the most part, like she finds him funny, and like he kind of, most of the time she knows he's joking around. Like he's not like, oh honey. And like there's moments where like he genuinely thanks her for like help and stuff like that. And like, you know, there's a moment in the second episode where she like basically saves their ass on like a fucking ad thing.
Yeah.
And he just says, thank you for doing that. Like you really helped us there. Like it's not like a
Yeah, it's true. He does respect her.
That's fair enough. There are those moments, and yes, I think he does respect her. I think they generally respect each other. There is enough believability in that way to the relationship for me. I guess, you know, I'm thinking again, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves to the other episode, but the whole thing, for instance, with the noise from the neighbors, and we'll talk more about that later, like she's holding it against him and she's just getting like so mad at him for not fixing this. And I don't know, it felt like the show was always falling back on that strategy in a lot of the scenes where she was just like mad about something.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, now that Barry's like bringing up his perspective, I feel like I see it more. I think I had like a weird prejudice when I was watching it about just putting myself in her shoes, where I was like, I would not have sex with that man. Just like just finding him like so completely unappealing. Like I would rather have sex with like Willy Wonka, Gene Wilder, you know.
I mean, I guess like, and yes,
he's a lot younger at that stage, but just like his whole presence is way more charismatic, and he's just like this like old
he is
grandpa.
Likable. He is likable in this. Mm-hmm. He's very mean in Willy Wonka.
I know, and maybe that just says more about me and my psychology. But
I think, Barry, you are kind of tempering my opinions that I went into this with, and I'm halfway coming around to your perspective on this. And I also probably went into watching the show with a bit of a bias, because from the top it felt like, okay, they needed a Gene Wilder vehicle. They wanted young kids because family sitcoms have to have young kids. So let's work backwards from that. And then, well, I guess his partner is going to be way younger, and I guess he has to have some cool job. And it felt like they just like worked backwards from the fact that they just built it around that. Like, how do we have Gene Wilder have little kids? How do we do that? There is nothing organic in any of the setup. It is all a list of things that are just thrown together.
Yeah. I mean, he could have very well been a grandfather. Like, I don't understand. And there could have been little kids living there with them.
I would have loved that.
Grandpa Gene, like for whatever reason, like the grandkids and the daughter or whoever has to like live with them. Like that would have been very believable.
I would have loved that.
Because so many sitcoms in the 90s
did that,
like had to start with like the parents are dead.
Yeah. Well, no, it could have been, I don't know. Maybe they were like, let's shake it up and do something different. And like, this is NBC, correct?
I should know that. It felt like NBC. Yeah, they were advertising for Cheers.
It was NBC. Yeah. And was it maybe one of the only like family sitcoms on NBC?
At that time, maybe.
Yeah, it feels like it was. So it's like maybe they were trying to like kind of straddle that line of like appealing to like urban people and like I don't know.
Yeah, I think everything about the show is like I said in my ramble, in my lead up, is harmlessly charming. It is not meant to offend. It is just a family sitcom that, you know, they've been making them since the 50s. They've been making them since the 50s. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. They're just trying to have people trying to let people have like a nice time, basically. And I think you still see these shows made every now and then, but they're meaner now.
Right. But counterpoint, it is all those things, Barry, but there were some edgy jokes wedged in there.
Okay. Like I didn't catch a lot of edge.
There were edgy jokes with Caleb.
The pilot had a few jokes that were so dark and edgy that it was surprising to see them juxtaposed against the scenes where he's playing in this charming way with the little kids.
Oh, yeah. I mean, so there's the Hitler joke, which
isn't a one-off. They bounce back to it. They spend
I didn't
mileage
find
on that.
That's not edgy though.
For a family sitcom? Yeah.
Yeah, for the context, it was edgy.
Yeah.
Because the way, so for our listeners to get some context here, Gene Wilder's character is, I don't know if he's the boss of, but let's call him a partner
he owns an advertising thing.
In an advertising agency. They live in a charming New England town, which we learn is the home of Norman Rockwell. And then when they introduce the ad agency for the first time,
it's in a barn.
It's in a barn in the woods. So it's a very small town New England sort of setting.
Yeah. It's like his barn somehow too. Like it's next door.
Our first
in between their homes, I guess.
Yeah.
Our first entree into the ad agency world of this series is Gene Wilder getting into an argument with another creative executive at the ad agency over a proposal for a campaign that is just a full-size magazine page with Hitler's face and some sort of slogan making a joke around that. And it's like a minute of dialogue on that, and then they kind of touch back to it later in the episode.
So that character is supposed to be his wife, his brother, it's supposed to be his brother-in-law.
Yeah.
So, who apparently has lots of wacky ideas and ideas that are in poor taste, and he relies on these controversial ideas, I guess, and that's where they bump heads a little bit, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, that joke worked for me just because that's some advertiser bullshit right there, where somebody's like, but you're talking about it, right?
Right. But that's not a wholesome joke.
Yeah, it's just
okay. You're right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's not wholesome.
You're right. Cleve on Derek's intro.
Yeah.
My family's been in the New England area for over 300 years, 200 years by choice.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Coming on the heels of him playing with the little kids and how cutesy the other scenes are. Yeah. Those are a bit of a record scratch moment.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it's bad. I thought it was interesting, but I thought it was an odd, it's almost like they were trying to do a New York sitcom, but put the, a Manhattan style sitcom, a lot of the stuff on NBC, but they were trying to put it in a new context.
Right. They've just moved from New York. Yeah,
so they just moved there. So, the thing that about the pilot, let's talk about the pilot a little more. I was a little confused about the setup. Were we supposed to believe that they had just moved there, both their homes and the business, or was the business already there and Gene's family just moved their home there too? I found that a little confusing.
I can't help
why would someone move their ad agency to a small town like that? What? That's what
I don't think they thought it through.
I don't think they thought it through. I was when we got a line of dialogue halfway through where they said what he did, I was like, oh, he's in advertising.
Yeah, but how could they get enough opportunity out there? I don't understand.
Well, the other thing that the show makes a point of, which really does not happen all that often, they're bad at it. They're not good at it. They're really bad. They're not a good ad agency. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. Maybe that's why. Maybe they always wanted to be in advertising. No, you know what? I can't even make up a story that makes any of this make sense.
It's very hard to believe. A lot of it is very hard to believe.
The ad agency's office, in spite of being in a barn, is pretty large and pretty lavishly decorated. And there's an implication in the other episode we watched that they have an established client base. And then in the pilot, right off the bat, we see that they have quite a spectacular house.
Yeah. It's a very idyllic.
So they are successful
house.
Somehow.
So,
maybe
I don't know.
Maybe he was. Maybe this is a business he started in retirement.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost like, okay, maybe they worked on Madison Avenue in Manhattan and they had kind of like they were doing pretty well, but then they wanted a quieter life, so they decided to like shift down there. But here's like the instant I have a solve for, the screenwriters like 30 years too late. Why didn't they just make it a thing where they merged with an existing company that was there of an older like person who ran all the local ads and then wanted to retire, so they kind of like merged with these new guys to like, because like how else do you explain how they suddenly have business? Because wouldn't you think in a town
they had 10 clients.
I guess.
They specify they only have 10 clients.
Okay. I don't know. It's all very like there's like a lot of holes there. Like I just feel like they could have like it would have been fun to have like an older person working with them who had already kind of been like the go-to person for like that would have made for a fun
juxtaposition would have been an older kind of close to retirement person who had this established small ad agency.
Older, so.
Yeah, but like let's say there's
they already have Gene Wilder.
Right.
He's in his 60s.
Let's say there's an established ad agency there. And they're kind of like whoever founded it is looking, toward retiring soon. And Gene Wilder was a successful ad man in New York, but wants to kind of slow the pace down, spend less hours working, wants to raise his kids. So they move to this quaint New England town. He gets hired at this agency. The agency's like, oh, we're getting this like top shelf guy from Madison Avenue. He's going to have all these great ideas. But ultimately, they're always butting heads because he doesn't understand
what clients they want.
And you would have that conflict and that funny juxtaposition. Like, that's something that we've now tossed around ideas for like 5 minutes and we've come up with something more plausible.
I just love how in the weeds you guys get on like just basics.
Deep in the weeds.
Well, we want to make it make sense, you know? I don't know.
All we want is for them to just spend a few minutes hashing out these details.
These are sitcoms, guys. These are sitcoms. Network sitcoms.
I know, you're right.
They're just meant to fill 22 minutes and sell some ads.
Yeah.
Well, then let me ask what you thought of the opening title sequence with the painting.
Well, that was gone after the first episode.
Right. I guess it was. I didn't notice it in the second one.
Yeah. They just, by the next one we watched, it was just a title card, which was only episode 4, so it did not take them long. The opening credits are very cheesy, and somebody just wanted Gene Wilder to sing. So he did.
Yeah.
And, he's got a nice, pleasant voice and all that. And it's like, doopy doop boop, boopy doo boop boo. Everything's nice and happy.
Yeah, like the theme of the song, like I couldn't tell you what the lyrics were, but the theme of the song is like, like you've like he's like singing to his wife and young family, like, oh, you've given me more happiness than I ever thought I could have. Like you gave me a second chance or whatever, like it's just kind of sweet, but it was also very old fashioned, and it was like juxtaposed with this weird, very 90s like style of them like doing weird artwork as a family, but it was like it was almost like they were painting on a glass or plastic, like a clear surface, so that if you're the cameras
they were painting on the frame.
Yeah, exactly. It was like they're painting on the frame of which is such a 90s thing of like a weird, like artsy kind of like.
It's definitely like you could have easily seen this as like a Cosby Show opening. Like the Cosby Show went through like 4 or 5 variations. Variations
openings.
on. That
was such a thing. Like, in the 90s, like if you had a family sitcom, you either had the funny like
Davis Rules.
Or you had like the funny opening where it was just like the thing that's too many cooks is satirizing, where they're all just like they're all in a situation and then they turn to the camera and like
smile for the freeze frame, smile for the portrait.
Yeah, or you have like the weird elaborate opening where that all the characters are doing some sort of strange activity that has nothing to do with the plot of the show. But it's just like a weird, I don't know.
Yeah, and I guess that's...
They're being families.
Yeah.
They're finger painting and whatnot.
Yeah, all families in the 90s like painted on like plexiglass together.
A lot of finger painting. A lot of finger painting.
I guess this kind of summarizes my reaction to the show after the pilot, which is that it really felt like, okay, I liked everyone in the cast. I think
everyone was great.
Everyone's very like talented in this show, and the sort of pace of the show, the number of like attempts at jokes per minute, even though like they didn't really do it for me laugh wise.
Yeah,
but
they
like
didn't land for me.
It didn't land for me, but like the pace was tight and it worked like in terms of the cast. But to me, this just felt like a sitcom written by an algorithm. And that was in a time before that was even possible. Because it just felt like all the tropes. Do you guys want to talk about the other episode?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, let's get into it, because this one is a doozy.
Yeah, so episode 4 was the other episode that we covered. And like I said earlier, it is the epitome of a stunt episode. It is something very common in a first season of a show. You basically write an entire episode around a guest star. And the show usually bends its way around the guest star, because you're just establishing an audience and stuff like that. Gene Wilder would be somebody you might build a stunt episode around on another show. Like Gene Wilder would show up and, everybody would, So in this one, which was called Hanging with Mr. Cooper, Gene and Annie deal with their very noisy new neighbors who are constantly throwing parties with very loud music. And it's 1993, I think?
94.
94.
Yeah.
So, of course, that new neighbor is rock and roll superstar Alice Cooper.
Because, of course. Why wouldn't it be?
And for those of you out there, who are a little bit younger than us, Alice Cooper was huge, but I almost feel like he's better known for showing up in things when people make a big deal that Alice Cooper is there.
That's true.
Yeah.
I mean, between this and Wayne's World, you're getting a pretty big meal out of Alice Cooper. For what it's worth, Alice Cooper is a very delightful presence, and there's probably a reason people kept throwing him in things.
Yeah.
Because he is able to just be, because he's a hard rocker and he has such a dramatic look to him, but he's a really soft-spoken guy, and he's kind of like quiet and funny, so it works. And most of this, you get a lot of good back and forth between Gene and Alice, who, as Alice says at one point, us two grown men with girls' names got to stick together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually found Alice Cooper quite charming in this, and I felt like he did kind of steal the show, like he kind of stole all those scenes, and I'm sure that was the intent when you would do a stunt episode like this. Yeah, it makes sense. Like, you see him bring a level of presence in this that kind of does explain why Alice Cooper does a lot of cameos, because he really kind of delivers on the comic timing, and him opposite Gene Wilder as a duo, Alice Cooper, in spite of like the crazy hair and makeup and stuff like that, is the straight character, and Gene Wilder is the funny character. And so it's funny to see the cameo celebrity stunt appearance be the one who plays the quote unquote like audience perspective relatable persona in the situation, and Gene Wilder does his shtick where he goes really big and gets really like worked up over things, and that's fun. Like, seeing the two of them bounce off each other, that worked for me.
Yeah, it was. I feel like he must have had a really good agent back then, like Alice Cooper. Like, he must have had like a really good like acting and performing agent who got him all these like, how much do you think they paid him for this? Like, they must have paid him a shitload.
Half the budget for the season.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Like, it's in it. But really, though, I mean, between this and Wayne's World, and this just feels like a sequel to his appearance in Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Was he still this big in 1994? Or are they just telling us he was?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because like even in Wayne's World, I'm like, was he really still?
Well, people that like, okay, so Gene's wife Annie is a huge fan.
Yeah.
And that's like a fun kind of subplot. Like, so she would have been in her like mid 30s at that time. So she would have been like the appropriate age to have been a huge Alice Cooper fan when she was young, right?
Yes.
So like the audience for both like Wayne's World and
True.
like they would have been like big fans, and he would have been someone like iconic that they would have liked and would still be excited to see.
Yeah, I think
right?
in 94 he would have still had a pretty iconic presence, even if he wasn't like top of the charts, like even if he wasn't putting out music like at that time.
Is there like an equivalent? Like, oh, for example, like if Dave Grohl showed up somewhere, we would all be freaking out. But
but Dave Grohl's still packing them in, man.
I know, but like to like the young folks, like he's not like an icon to like.
Sure he is.
Who's the guy from Smashing Pumpkins?
Billy Corgan.
Billy Corgan.
Yeah, there you go.
There
Billy
you
Corgan.
go.
I don't know if that's comparable.
Except nobody ever liked Billy Corgan.
Yeah, I don't know. It's
here's my
we
here's
need to go early thousands.
okay, yeah, maybe early thousands.
Okay, Green Day guy.
Billy Joe.
Yeah, but nobody
Armstrong,
likes him.
yeah.
Nobody likes him either.
I don't know, Barry. You might get some angry comments. I feel like there's a lot of Green Day stands out there.
I love Green Day. I don't like Billy Joe Armstrong.
Yeah.
That was a show. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey, honey, why haven't you eaten your toast?
I don't know. I guess I'm just sick of this regular, boring peanut butter.
Well, maybe it's time we make our meals an adventure.
Whoa, what's this? Wonder nut butter?
Try it.
Wow, it's good. It's spiced, but not spicy.
You're such a witty and precocious child.
Spread the world with Wander Nut Butter's internationally inspired flavors. It's made with only peanuts, spices, and salt, and no added sugar. Try every flavor of Wander Nut Butters today.
I don't know. That kid sounded a little old.
Really? I thought it was pretty good casting.
That commercial failed to mention that Wander is based right here in Toronto, Canada.
Or that you can eat Wander Nut Butters as a healthy snack, like, you know, adding it to a smoothie.
Also, there are 3 flavors available, inspired by spices from India, Morocco, or Thailand.
I really liked the Moroccan peanut butter on toast with apricot or peach jam.
I've tried Wander. It's delicious. It looked so enticing. These ads really work.
You can even cook with it, like if you're making a soup or a sauce.
We've been talking a really long time about this commercial.
Yeah, wait. Is this meta? Are we part of a commercial? Is Wander a sponsor if that was a show?
All I know is that our listeners can get a 15% discount when they order Wander Nut Butters online at tastewander.com/twas. That's taste, WANDER.com/TWAS, and use the coupon code TWAS15 at checkout. And you can follow them at taste.wander on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.
What are you reading from? Where is that? You didn't answer any of my questions.
Okay, here's my hot take on this series, though, because I think a lot of these things we're commenting on all tie back to one issue, which is that, you know, Gene Wilder and the creators of this show, their age at the time this show was made, these throwbacks to the music that, you know, even for the younger character, the implication is like this was her favorite music.
She said she lost her virginity,
to it. So the implication is that this is, you know, music that's kind of a nostalgia for her, even.
Yeah.
And she's the younger adult in the show. This sitcom to me feels like an 80s show that was made in 1994. It feels like the casting, the jokes, the comedic sensibility, even that juxtaposition between like wholesome family comedy, but also certain like moments of edginess feels like something like the way they did that in the 80s, maybe late 80s, but like 5 to 7 years prior to when this show was made. It doesn't quite feel contemporary to its time.
Yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I thought that the plot of the episode was like fun. Like I thought it was like it was weird and hard to believe, but it was like fun. Like the idea that Alice Cooper happens to be their neighbor, and Gene goes over there to try to like get some like to deal with the fact that he's like making noise at all hours of the night and tries to reason with him, but then he gets sucked into the whole party scene and he ends up in his music video, and so and then he gets his face painted like Alice Cooper and it doesn't come off, so he has to hide his weird like thing around his eye, and like it's very silly, but
very silly. There's a lot of great Who's on First jokes.
Okay.
Is it Aaron's like great? I don't know.
That Who's on First scene, although to their credit, they called themselves out on it being a ripoff of Abbott and Costello. That thing, like the shtick from to me, it felt like shtick from the era of Gene Wilder's big movies.
Sure.
Versus
and that's why people were watching.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it was.
Okay, and that's why people tuned in, but like I don't know, it makes me feel like who's this show for?
Yeah, like the whole time Aaron and I were like, who is this show for? Like I don't understand. Like it is a weird, like it wasn't for us, definitely. We were just kind of like the whole time when they were making jokes.
The
we were
Who's
just
on
like,
First
no.
thing was kind of hammy, and
I don't know what to say, guys. I just like we're 42 episodes into this. These are sitcoms.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
Let's
There are cheesy things that we like too.
Yeah, but
you know?
check out these tropes. We've got the hot mom, schlubby dad thing. And when you see her like dressed to meet Alice Cooper,
she looked hot.
She looked hot.
And I don't know why he was like embarrassed of her.
Yeah.
She like, if anything, he should be like, yeah. This is
Well,
my
because
wife.
he keeps making it very clear he has no idea who Alice Cooper is.
Yeah.
Even
Well,
by
yeah,
the end of it, even after being in his music video.
Yeah. To be fair, I did find that very funny because like Alice Cooper called him out. He's like, you really don't know who I am, do you?
Yeah.
Because you're old, and that's the implication,
and that's
what was that was funny to me.
The trying to hide something trope, that gag, you know, with the eye makeup that wouldn't come off, and then the woman's visiting the ad agency, and she's kind of conservative, so they don't want her to see the fact that he has this like makeup on his face. So he's doing all these crazy body contortions and moves and covering his face, and that. Yeah.
Gene Wilder stuff. Yeah.
I know, but I can't.
I didn't like the way that they did it. They could have done it a funnier thing where they put something on his face, like where they put like an object there instead of him trying to do it with his own body. It didn't make any sense because there were points where he didn't have anything there, and then she would like turn slightly and he would have to like jump down and hide.
And grab
I was like,
her and
she
spin
would
her
have still
around.
seen it. Like she would have still, I don't know. It felt like very much they were letting him just riff.
It was dumb, but it was, you know, it's slapstick.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
It's slapstick.
Yeah.
Or, you know, also I actually, again, I didn't mind the whole bringing in Alice Cooper thing. I thought that was kind of a charming choice. But the bit of that did bump for me is this other very specific kind of trope that I'm going to name the celebrity savior trope, which comes through in that line of dialogue near the end that is, and I quote, "Alice, can you do me one more little favor?"
Yeah, we all knew that was coming. That's how the sitcoms work.
Yeah. Well, and I was just like,
I agree.
The moment where the three of them were performing that song, I was just like, oh. Like, and that was when Aaron and I looked at each other and were like, how much did they pay him to, like, Alice Cooper to do this? Because this is so humiliating. Like, this is so, like, you know, below him.
It was a high-profile gig.
Ugh.
It is, but like...
It is, but it's so, like, it's just so
cheesy.
And it's like, he's, like, a respected rock star. Like,
you know what? The moment when you see the music video,
standing next to a very well respected, if not more well respected actor.
I know,
but not in the context of this story.
This show was below both of them. I guess that's my point. Like this show. This show was so like grown, like made me groan so much, like in a not, you know, like it was just like.
But I also think some of this is just like structural stuff. Some of this is just like do another script draft stuff. Like that moment where it reveals that Gene accidentally ended up in the Alice Cooper music video with the makeup on his face, that's the peak of that arc. That should have come later. I would have loved for that to be kind of like the final punctuation on that whole arc would be like, that comes out in the meeting with the woman from the town where it's on the TV and she sees that or something like that. Like I would have made that the climax as opposed to the thing that is supposed to then incite a whole bunch of business that just gets all muddled.
I did find it kind of fun that the initial intention with the ad that they were trying to do. So basically, they were trying to do an ad for local tourism, right? And the whole angle at the beginning was supposed to be capitalizing on the fact that it was the home of Norman Rockwell.
Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Yeah, so they were trying to encourage, so basically they were working with this woman who was with the tourism board to try to come up with a campaign to encourage tourism, and then they were like, oh, they're gonna like focus on this very wholesome, iconic fact that it was like Norman Rockwell, and then they went like almost the opposite direction with like, if Alice Cooper likes it here, it's like awesome. And Alice Cooper has the reputation of being kind of like outrageous and like subversive, right? So I don't know, but I think they mentioned Norman Rockwell in the little ditty that they come up with too. So that's kind of a fun, it's like,
this is one of the throwaways that this is giving too much credit, but this is me being like, they're so bad at their jobs that they're trying to figure out the tourism for this small town where the only thing the town is known for is being the home of Norman Rockwell. And they don't think to bring in Norman Rockwell. Like, they don't think to use that in their ads.
Yeah.
Like, they were like, when Annie comes in, she's like, oh, are you going to do the Norman Rockwell thing? And like, it had never occurred to them.
Yeah.
The one thing the town was famous for. Yeah. They were like, oh yeah, no, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. It was interesting. Lots of interesting choices.
Yeah. Of course, the 90s house party trope and all of the archetypal characters that you see in the house was perfect.
The mouse guy. I love him so much.
So the mouse guy was basically this like kind of hanger-on of Alice Cooper, like this buddy of Alice Cooper, this younger guy who was like hanging out. He looked exactly like Anthony Kiedis. I thought it was Anthony Kiedis at first, but it wasn't.
I love that character so much.
Yeah.
They managed to get a lot of mileage out of. Well, okay, so first you had him with the guy with the mouse. And that was the first who's on first, what? But then he had a couple of great, he's like, no, I'm only going to talk to, I need to talk to somebody who understands me. And he goes, oh man, that's beautiful.
I laughed.
That was a good line.
I genuinely laughed at that line. That was cute. That was
I'm here to see Alice. Alice doesn't live here anymore.
Oh yeah.
I'm just kidding. Come on in. I just wanted to say that.
But here's the thing too. Like that was another moment where I was like, who is this show for? Because I felt like a very specific audience would get that joke. Yeah. I felt like people watching a family sitcom wouldn't necessarily get that joke.
Yeah, not every joke's for everybody.
I guess. Anyway,
I mean, think about the amount of Simpsons jokes that we didn't get when we were kids.
Right.
Even if you didn't, his delivery of it was funny.
It
still counts as a joke.
I feel like that character, the mouse guy, is a trope. Like the 90s, kind of rock.
The dude.
Yeah, like the rock and roll. What do you call that? Like a male groupie, basically. Where he's just
groupie?
like the dude that's just like
I thought he was more of a roadie.
Yeah, I guess he was kind of a roadie.
Yeah, he could be a roadie.
But he's like this eccentric guy who's obviously done more drugs than the actual rock stars, and he's kind of he's got really long hair, and he's often ends up taking his shirt off at various points, and
I'd call him the handsome, long-haired, stoned roadie.
Yeah, but that is
was
a
trope for sure.
Very much a 90s trope, not so much an 80s trope.
Yeah. The other thing, actually, Brynn, you first pointed this out when we were watching it together. The music from this loud party. So when we're in the main family home and we hear this loud music coming from next door, It just
Yeah.
sounds like it's coming from their own home
Yeah,
or
it's
from
so
like
badly mixed.
from like the soundtrack. Like they didn't EQ it to sound like it was coming from next door. And
Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
not a difficult
it's
thing
not
to
like
do.
a muffled thing. Like
it
it's
should have
just-
been muffled
it
and
sounded
bassy.
completely clear and like
Yeah.
you could hear every word.
And that might seem like a small detail, but like for me, that
It was annoying.
really was annoying, yeah. But the payoff of it being Alice Cooper's house, that was good.
It
I
was
like
good.
that. I had a genuine laugh at that moment in the pilot when the contractor comes in and he just puts the sledgehammer through the wall.
Yeah. There was like an outtake. There was like a blooper at the
Yeah,
end of the
yes,
episode where it didn't
yeah.
work properly.
Yeah, the sledgehammer bounced off the wall and broke or something like
Yeah.
that. Because
Yeah,
it's
that
probably
was
like
funny.
a prop hammer. But like, yeah, that kind of slapstick gag, that does it for me.
I wish sitcoms did the bloopers in the closing credits more. I never really liked the we're just gonna do an extra scene during the credits.
Yeah.
Just show me a blooper.
Yeah,
show me
the
a blooper.
bloopers are very fun.
Yeah.
Especially on a show like this that's shot on a soundstage. Like,
Yeah.
show me like the awkwardness that comes from that. Like that's that was more charming than almost anything in these two episodes. And by almost, I mean definitely. Like just seeing the two of them like awkwardly not know how to move on through the scene. That was fun. A lot of fun to see.
So, Brynn, how does Something Wilder connect with the iconic sitcom Friends?
I mean, it does. Just like literally every single show we've done so far, there is very strong connections. And, there are 2 1-degree connections to Friends.
Oh, do tell.
First one is through Gregory Itzin, who plays Jack Travis, Gene's business partner in Something Wilder. He guest starred on Friends in a few episodes playing Phoebe Buffay's father-in-law, Theo Hannigan.
Oh, he's Paul Rudd's father?
Paul Rudd's character's father, yeah.
Nice.
And then the second 1-degree connection is through one of the staff writers. So Seth Kurland was a writer for both Something Wilder and for Friends.
Oh.
Yeah. Hopefully he moved from Something Wilder into Friends, so he worked for a while.
Yeah, it looks like
Hopefully he wasn't like, I'm jumping ship on this Friends piece of shit.
Yeah,
I'm jumping over onto this.
He was on Friends later. It looks like from like late 90s on. That's
Okay, good.
yeah, good for him, eh? He moved up in the world.
This didn't tank him.
No, I mean, just like everything, this is the perfect segue. Just like everything else, these kind of duds of shows don't tend to tank people, especially not the actors, right? Like as we've seen over and over again, like they all kind of end up having very successful careers, or they wind down their already successful careers. So I guess we'll just start with Hilary B. Smith, who co-starred as Annie in Something Wilder. So she became sort of known more for being a soap actor. So she was already part of the ensemble of The Bold and the Beautiful, but then she just continued on with them. She also was in One Life to Live and General Hospital, as well as having many other roles in films and television. So she's still acting to this day, and being Annie did not slow her down at all. I'll mention that the 2 little boys who played the twins basically left acting. Ian Bottiglieri basically only took this role, and he probably took that kid acting money and did something good with it. Hopefully.
Or his parents did.
Or his parents did, sadly. And then
Might never have seen $1.
Yeah, and Carl Michael Linder, who was the Lindner, who was the other twin, had a few roles here and there as a child, but then nothing after 2004. So clearly they were just meant to be little mini Gene Wilders, and then that was it. Jake Weber.
I love Jake Weber. I'm just gonna say,
Yeah.
I love all the Webers. I love your Jakes. I love your Steven.
Yeah.
And I think there's another one.
So Jake Weber, who played Richie, has had a very solid TV and film career. He's, got tons and tons of credits on IMDb. Some of his notable roles in recent years include Medium, Homeland, 13 Reasons Why, and Star Trek Discovery. Like, he's just everywhere. He's one of those, like, faces that you see all the time. Gregory Itzin, who we already mentioned having guest starred on Friends. He's also had a hugely prolific career. He was also in another Twas show. Do you guys remember which one?
Aliens in the Family?
No, he was in The Nut House.
Oh, yes, of course he was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yep.
So that's a fun
That's the one that I was bringing up earlier. The
Nut
Mel
House.
Brooks
Yeah, the Mel Brooks
show. Yeah.
Which is kind of funny that he ends up being in this Gene
Yeah,
Wilder show later on. But, you know, he's also been in the cast of many successful shows like Murder One, The Profiler, The Practice, 24, and Big Love. And he was also in the cast of It's Like You Know, Aaron. So
Really?
yeah.
Oh.
He's got like 2 episodes of that.
He was
so.
he was like the villainous Nixon stand-in on 24.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we also have Cleavant Derricks, who was also Aaron already knows which other Twas show he was in, but do you know, Barry? Do you remember? So Cleavant played Caleb, the contractor.
Yeah, wasn't he in the hell was it called? No, he was in Whoops, wasn't he?
Yes, he was our favorite character in Whoops.
Yes.
He played Dr. Frederick Ross on Whoops.
I was reaching too far, and then I was like, wait, no, he's in Whoops.
So he
was really funny in this too.
Okay, so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole looking up his learning more about his career. Like, he was a very prolific person already in the music industry as well as on Broadway. He actually originated the role of Jimmy Early in the original Broadway production of Dreamgirls. And Jimmy Early, for you guys who might not be that familiar with the play, is the character that Eddie Murphy played in the movie. So he originated that role, and that's like an iconic role. And he was very active in several other Broadway productions, not only as a performer, but doing lots of vocal arrangements and music production. He was also in one of the touring companies of Wicked, playing the Wizard. So he's had a really interesting career. And then, as we already mentioned, he's basically been a scene stealer in a few sitcoms that were short-lived, including both Whoops and now Something Wilder. But yeah, he went on to do many other things after these shows.
Did he do more episodes of this?
He was only in, it says 3 total, but I don't know if that's accurate. It feels like he was more of a regular, but
he wasn't in the regular cast list.
Yeah.
He was my favorite part of both the pilot of this show and Whoops.
Yeah.
But I felt like his role in the pilot was so small that I was just like, is this character coming back? What's going on?
Yeah.
We never really addressed that they're renovating again.
It's true. But I don't know. He had I found him he had lots of presents for me. So I was like, he's still notable.
Big time.
He also went on to co-star in Sliders, and every time I looked up
Sliders.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sliders.
So when I was doing my research, everywhere it was known for Sliders. I'm like, come on.
He does other things.
Yeah, he does lots of other things, and he's
yeah, but oh man, Sliders, that cast, Jerry O'Connell.
Yeah.
Ernie Hudson.
Yeah.
John Rhys Davies. What a cast.
We're not doing a spin-off podcast on Sliders.
Because you guys won't let me have any fun.
Guys, he was also in another Twas show.
Oh.
He was in Sibs for an episode.
Wow.
So he's all over.
Sibs.
Yeah. Okay, and then finally we have Gene Wilder. So
who?
Yeah, Gene Wilder.
Oh, that guy.
Yeah, that guy. So obviously everyone knows his career. His prolific career as a comedy icon, from his roles in Mel Brooks movies to my personal favorite. I always associate him with Willy Wonka. Yes, Barry, he was mean in parts of Willy Wonka, but he was also so I don't know. There were so many moments in that
Terrifying?
movie. No! You know, it's just like, I think of that song, The Land of Pure Imagination, you know, like that is such a like wonderful song. Like that is like the song that like captures the like spirit of that story and that like, you know, I don't know. Anyway, whatever. I obviously have issues if I like found him so endearing and everyone else is like, he's this weird candy factory tyrant. But
by the way, I'm going to put in my request now that you absolutely have to do a post on our Instagram with that Gene Wilder from Willy Wonka meme.
What's that? I don't even know what that
one
meme
of the
is.
most popular memes in internet history.
It's just the meme that you say when you're trying to be incredulous, like, "Oh, you did this."
It's just that image of him, like kind of looking a little bit condescendingly at something, and then you just put the text over it. We're gonna do that.
Okay, we will then. Yeah. So everyone knows him from his like long film career. After Something Wilder, he very much wound down his career. So he continued to do some voice work for Sesame Street, and he starred in 3 made-for-TV movies, 2 of which where he played the same character, one of which was like a star-studded Alice in Wonderland TV movie.
Hatter?
No, he played the turtle, like the mock turtle.
Hatter.
But Barry, look it up though. Like it is a crazy cast.
Is that the one with Kate Beckinsale?
No. It's from it's like the late 90s. It's Tina Mangerino is playing Alice, and it's like completely star-studded. Like Ben Kingsley's in it, like Patricia, who else is in it? Anyway, there's tons of people in it. It's a thing.
Tina Margarino's great.
Yeah, and so you already alluded to his other later iconic sitcom role, which was only a guest star, and that is his role in Will and Grace, where he played Will's boss, and he won an Emmy for that guest starring role. So after that, he kind of just sort of settled down and lived a very like quiet, peaceful life, writing novels and painting, which sounds like very idyllic. Like that actually sounds lovely. Making a lot of money like early in life and then just like retiring and just chilling and making art for the sake of making art. Like that sounds wonderful.
That does sound pretty great.
Sadly, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's and he kept it a secret for many years. And he passed away due to complications from that. But he did live a long and happy life, and obviously everybody remembers him for his like long and
his Gene Wilderness.
His Gene Wilderness, yeah. Let's call it what it is.
Just because I feel like our audience is the kind of audience who will sit and listen to me do this, you were right. What a delightful cast this Alice in Wonderland movie has.
Yeah.
Whoopi Goldberg is the Cheshire Cat. Ben Kingsley is the Caterpillar. Robbie Coltrane is Tweedledum, and George Wendt is Tweedledee.
Yeah.
Christopher Lloyd is the White Knight. Pete Postlewaite is the Carpenter. Miranda Richardson is the Queen of Hearts. I know I was like, oh my God, how do they not cast Gene Wilder as the Mad Hatter? Well, that's because Martin Short was the Mad Hatter, and there's only one other. Yeah, like that makes sense. That's
What's this called?
It's Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
It's like a TV movie adaptation of Alice in Wonderland.
This sounds delightful.
From like 99. It's, it sounds
it's gotta
delightful.
Be terrible. It's probably terrible.
I know. It's probably not good. It's probably like late 90s CGI. Like I looked at some stills from it and it looks very much like, oh, they're trying to make a visual spectacle of it all. So it's probably, you'd probably watch it and be like, oh yeah, this is very like 99
I guess that's why we
CGI.
haven't heard of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was probably Wonderful World of Disney like TV.
It was part of like a series of several of these like literary adaptations that were sort of larger than life. Like I kind of saw like associated things, which were like, I think they did Gulliver's Travels. Like they did.
I remember that with Ted Danson.
Yes, like there were lots of these came out in like the late 90s where they were like full of big stars.
Weird.
And they were. Yeah, they were meant to like showcase like intense like visual effects and like production design, and I don't know who was funding these things, but they were all these like literary classics.
Probably the
wonderful.
These were probably Wonderful World of Disney Sunday night movies.
I think it probably was. Yeah.
Yeah. TV movies, believe it or not, people, were not just on Lifetime. They were on major networks. And yeah, like Wonderful World of Disney. Why can't I say that? Wonderful World of Disney like ran for years and years and years and probably produced hundreds of TV movies.
They did.
Yeah. Because they brought it back in the 90s again and then thousands and probably more recent too.
I feel like this was more of it was meant to be for the whole family. Like it wasn't necessarily like the 7 p.m. Wonderful World of Disney crowd. Like I feel like it might have been something different. But anyway, it's the same idea. It's like, you know, these like big scale productions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it was 99, so like we still weren't shooting things like they were big scales.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess we ought to check in with Mr. Producer to see if he has any comments on this particular show.
Hey kid, let's do this thing. I've got a breakfast meeting in a few hours I need to prep for.
Breakfast? It's like 5 p.m.
Yeah, I'm in Tibet.
You are? What are you doing there?
I'm working on this big new sitcom pitch.
In Tibet?
Oh, well, I'm courting a pretty big name.
Anyone I know?
Well, I probably shouldn't say. Let's just say he's a pretty big deal down here. You might even say he's quite revered. Holy, even. Anyways, what's the show we're talking about this week?
Wait. Are you there to pitch a sitcom to the Dalai Lama?
Well, yeah.
Like the Dalai Lama?
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people don't see it, but I saw him do a tight 10 minutes at the Comedy Store back in 2017, and...
Killed it?
It was a bit dry, but he packed the seats, that's for sure. You can't argue with star power like that.
I guess not. Well... This week we're talking about Something Wilder with Gene Wilder.
Oh, sure, Gene Wilder. Talk about star power.
You were a fan.
Huge fan, both on and off screen. He was a true professional in every sense of the word. He was a singer, a dancer, a comedian, and he made an above-average grilled cheese sandwich as well.
Wait a second, hold on.
What is it, Barry?
So you're in Tibet, and you're trying to get the Dalai Lama to star in a sitcom?
Yeah, why? Look, kid, I don't need some lecture about age from a young punk like you. Funny is funny.
Well, no, it's not that. It's just, he doesn't live in Tibet.
Of course he does. What are you talking about?
No, Barry's right. He's been living in exile.
Oh, what do you mean? Since when? When did this happen?
Like 1959?
Yeah, Something Wilder is a great show. Look, I gotta make a call.
Well, that was certainly enlightening. I'm sure he'll be fine. I didn't know he was still pitching sitcoms, I gotta be honest.
I mean, you gotta admire the hustle there.
Has anybody got any leftovers?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to bring up before is the whole weird phenomenon of when a show is meant to be a vehicle for a specific performer and they put their name, their like last name in the title, but then the character's last name is not that last name.
Like the Michael Richards show?
Yes, it's so annoying. It's like, yes, it's Something Wilder. Okay, that's kind of a fun play on words, but then he's Gene Bergman.
Yeah, why don't you just call the show Gene?
Yes. Yeah. Because his name is Gene in both scenarios.
It's a very common thing, too.
Yeah,
it happens
it's annoying.
It's like not just a one-off. It happens
all
a lot.
the time.
Yeah.
It's always like the blank blah, blah, blah show. And then the character always has the same first name, but it's never the same last name because if their life is too different from the real person, then it becomes a whole confusing thing. But like Aaron was saying earlier when we were just chatting about it, like, oh, well, the audience, they have to make sure the audience knows that they're in it because they think people are so dumb. Like,
yeah. Which is funny though, because like this is maybe the only scenario I can even think of where it isn't just the something something show.
Yeah.
Like normally this problem would come up because the show would be called the Gene Wilder Show.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. Why even bother calling it something Wilder?
Yeah.
And I've given my grumpy rant about this before, but like I don't love when shows are the so-and-so show at all. That was my one beef with the John Larroquette show, as it turned out, a show that I enjoyed vastly more than I thought I would, except the title, the John Larroquette Show.
Was his character named John?
No.
No.
Well, then what was the point?
But he also, just like this, like he had a pretentious last name too. Now it was like John like Hemingway or something like that.
Hemingway, yes. That's what it was.
Right?
Yeah. So they did maybe keep the same first name, but then his last name was Hemingway.
No, my question was his name John?
It might have been.
It was a character named John. I couldn't remember.
It was definitely, his name was definitely John Hemingway.
You know what?
It's annoying.
To me, I was saying to Brynn before we recorded, when you have a show like Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David plays Larry David, like plays himself, former co-creator of Seinfeld, and he's playing a caricatured version of himself, I get why you would name the character the same as the actor.
Sure.
But these shows where it's clearly a vehicle for a particular star, but the character is not at all like that person in real life, just give them a fictional name. Don't give them the same first name. Don't put the actor's name in the title of the show. We know who it is. He's recognizable. We see him. We all know why we tuned in to watch this.
I guess it probably all goes back to like shit like the Bob Newhart show and stuff like that. Like it's just weird. It's just weird.
It's old-fashioned and
it's old-fashioned. And it's also like, you're clearly just used to calling it like, we're gonna do that we're gonna do that Gene Wilder show.
Mm-hmm.
And then like, at least I'll give them this one. At least I guess they threw a title on it this time, but they went the wrong direction.
Yeah.
But you're right. That's why it bothers me. It feels old-fashioned. Whenever a show is named the so-and-so show, that just immediately feels like it's the 70s or something.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because the creators of the show were like the same age as Gene Wilder, and they're, pretty much on their way to retirement themselves. So, and I think this is like something we've seen over and over again. Like a lot of these shows, not all, but like there are a fair amount of these shows that we've covered where they're like the last show that someone creates who's like a long-standing sitcom writer, a TV writer, and you can always tell there's like a little bit of it where it's like, oh, that feels a little hammy, a little old school. And at least in this one, they tried to liven it up and put things like have Alice Cooper in it and stuff like that. But
I bet the tonal whiplash in something like this is coming from them being like, I just really want to make a show like they used to have, just like one of the good old days. And they're like, all right, well, let's staff up the writer's room. And then they get some kids in there who are like, what do you think about this Hitler joke?
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And then like the other people in the room are like, what?
That's a fun point, Barry. Yeah. The edgier jokes were probably their younger staff writers.
Yeah. Well, we made it. We did it.
What a wild ride, guys.
How would this show say to roll credits? How would Gene Wilder announce that?
He would scream it.
Yeah, it would be some chaotic thing.
There are many instances where they got him to scream in this.
And cut the credits! That Was a Show is created and hosted by Brynn Byrne, Andrew Barry Helmer, and myself, Aaron Yeger. It's a production of Radio Gizmo in Toronto, Canada. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. Follow us on Instagram and tell your friends about it. That Was a Show?
Radio Gizmo.
That was
fun.
Pretty, that was as close to a Gene Wilder impression as I thought anybody
had.
had.
Pretty good, Aaron. And you don't really impersonate people ever.
No.
That's not a thing you do.
It is not.